not like us who age like a good wine. It improves with time. This song never ceases to amaze me as the days pass. A couple of items from the previous verse have recently struck my attention. What if I told you that before the feud even began, Kendrick was aware that Drake had acknowledged abusing Atlanta musicians? Or what if I told you that this is also the reason why Future and Metro Boomin, Kendrick's initial reaction to Drake following his release of First Person Shooter, ended up the way they did? Let me tell you about this documentary that Drake produced for Magic City first. Though, Drake co-produced the documentary for a gentleman's club, but the final episode attracted a lot of interest. The episode I want to discuss today is episode 5, which was just released. You see, there is a scene in the last episode, which is titled after Future's song Tony Montana, where the residents of Magic City initially appear to have doubts about Future. The first would be Drake, who recalled hearing Future for the first time in a Toronto bum studio. He clarified that when he first heard Future, he had seemed ethereal or elevated. DJ Esco, however, comes after Drake's comments. DJ Esco works at the Magic City Club as a DJ, and Esco talks about how he wanted to play Future, but received criticism for doing so, and believed that the result would lead to his termination. The boss's son Guju is the next one to question Future. After the two, he adds that he and others didn't enjoy it because it was repetitive, because he thought Future repeated himself a lot. He didn't enjoy the song. However, bear in mind that Drake is producing this, and at this segment of the show, it seemed as though the audience was sharing their reservations about Future's initial appearance. They started this section in which they questioned Future as he made his public debut in Atlanta. Luckily for Future, the benefits exceeded the drawbacks. Future and the music he was creating were genuinely enjoyed by the dancers and others. People were affected by it. It stayed with the club members. Despite Drake's and others' claims that they didn't understand Future because he was intoxicated or kept repeating himself, others still found enjoyment in the music. Future was still popular in spite of everything. And it's funny because Drake and everyone else are currently grooving with Future. It's also hilarious that Drake brought up Atlanta and relocating there when he first started working with Lil Wayne. He went on to say that he was caught between two different times. It would have been the 2000s at this point, transitioning to the 2010s when Future and everyone else from Atlanta began to establish themselves. However, this is significant since Drake acknowledges in the same interview that he is aware of Atlanta and that working with an Atlanta artist is essential if you want to succeed in the rap industry. Additionally, I believe that this is what might have annoyed Kendrick and Future, because, as you may recall, he makes fun of Kendrick Lamar in the same documentary episode when he claims that he doesn't care if people respect another musician more than he does. But as I mentioned earlier, he acknowledges in the same episode that in order to remain relevant in the rap industry and culture, he must work with Atlanta musicians, admitting that Tony Montana hopped on the remix in 2011 around the time that Future began to gain popularity and everyone's eyes were on the Future, even though he had doubts about it when he initially heard it, is absurd. Atlanta is focused on Magic City, the Future, and other things. Recall that Drake acknowledged that he was caught between two periods and probably sought ways to remain relevant. He concluded that if people were enjoying Future, he would use him and Atlanta artists to be relevant for the upcoming generation. Please remember that this documentary was only screened once in 2024 at South by Southwest in March, having been filmed and completed in 2023. This is strange because, if you recall, the single featuring Future and Kendrick Lamar was released in that same month. In 2024, Southwest gave it a peek at South in the same month. According to the report, the series had its premiere at the highly regarded South by Southwest in March 2024, after filming concluded in 2023. However, how likely is it that something like that will be released in March 2024? Days after South by Southwest officially ended the event, the Kendrick Lamar and Future song Like That was released. It appears that whoever was at South by Southwest in March 2024 either informed Kendrick and Future about this documentary or the circumstances, or they were aware of it in 2023 after the formal completion of filming. In any case, it appears odd that this song is released immediately after the documentary on Future's use of Atlanta artists and individuals to stay relevant, followed by Kendrick slipping in the same episode. And then, of course, the beef and everything that followed, which leads us to the point where people don't like us because, as you may recall, I mentioned the third verse and how Kendrick Lamar again mentions the future in it. And now that this documentary is formally out to the public, I believe what he says about Future is what most interests me. You called Future when you didn't see the club. Kendrick Lamar then states, as Kendrick mentioned the mole in 616 in LA and how he knew members of Drake's entourage that wanted to see him fail. I'm now beginning to think about it. I'm now beginning to wonder how they found out about this documentary. Because Drake actually says that in the most recent episode. He claims that in order to remain relevant, he understood he needed to work with Atlanta artists. In that same episode, he talks about how he doesn't care if other artists admire him more than he does. Although he doesn't mention Kendrick Lamar by name, following the completion of the recording, he evidently had a feud with Kendrick that continued the following year. Was there someone who gave Kendrick the tip then? Did someone have a tip about F? After they completed filming this documentary, or after they saw it at South by Southwest? Did someone inform them of this? In any case, I find it odd that 10 days after Southwest premiered this in South Carolina, we get like that with Kendrick. Could this be the primary factor in Kendrick and Future's decision to collaborate? I don't know. However, I can state that in my view, this contributed to it. Let's keep it a secret. However, I found it intriguing how everything is beginning to come together. Kendrick's statement, "You called Future when you didn't see the club," also makes more sense. Following Drake's admission in a club documentary that he was in between eras and that he needed to use Atlanta artists to be relevant, he acknowledged that Future's period was ready to take over. Furthermore, even though he thought Future sounded good, he was included on the 2011 remix, proving that he continued to use it to keep current. Drake has been employing similar strategies to stay relevant since 2011, even going so far as to use up-and-coming musicians like Future. It goes without saying that they have a collaborative record after this and carry on in that manner. I didn't mean to pun. However, since the publication of this documentary, Kendrick's discussion of the future and not being like us is beginning to make a lot more sense. He put it this way: you didn't see the club, so you phoned Future. However, please let me know your thoughts on this. I find it quite strange that Drake kind of disparages both of these guys while using Atlanta artists, and that this documentary was released around the same time as like. It's an absurd situation. What do you think about this? A huge thank you to everyone who took part in the recent lives. A huge thank you to everyone who expressed affection. Thank you to everyone you see on the screen. Don't forget to give them some affection as well. Click on the links in the comment section of the description. Be sure to give them a round of applause. Thanks to all. From the bottom of my heart, I adore you all. Please be sure you subscribe and like. Man, I'll see you all in the next video. I'll keep it a legend, guy. So please like, comment, and subscribe. Face.